What if I told you the most beautiful smile in 16th century Japan wasn't white? It was black. Jet black. On purpose. While you're here spending real money on whitening strips and veneers to get that perfect white smile, an entire culture was doing the exact opposite. Dyeing their teeth black every day for the rest of their lives. And for them, it wasn't gross. It was elegant. And this wasn't some fringe thing 3 people did in a basement. This was mainstream. Emperors did it, nobles did it, married women did it. And some of the toughest warriors in Japanese history, samurai, actual sword-carrying, battle-hardened samurai did it too. There's even a name for it, Ohaguro, which delightfully just means black teeth. Japanese naming conventions really don't mess around. Yeah, sit with that one. Warriors, the guys you picture charging into battle, screaming, swinging a sword, also had a little morning beauty routine most of us would find genuinely wild. So how old is this thing? Older than you'd guess. Archaeologists have found blackened teeth in Japanese graves going all the way back to prehistory, way before anyone was writing anything down. By the time we do get written records, the Heian period, roughly 794 to 1185 AD, it was already a well-established look among the upper class. Here's how the whole thing actually worked. You couldn't just paint your teeth once and call it a day. The dye had a name, kanamizu, and it was basically iron filings soaked in vinegar or rice wine, mixed with some natural tannins from things like tea or crushed gall nuts, until the iron rusted just right and turned this deep, glossy black. Problem is, it didn't stick around. It faded fast, sometimes in a single day, so you were touching it up constantly, almost every day, just to keep the color looking fresh. And I need you to really picture that for a second. This wasn't a quick 5-minute thing before bed. This was a real, ongoing commitment. And on top of that, the dye smelled genuinely bad. People kept doing this anyway, every day, for years, for their entire adult lives, smell and all, because the payoff mattered that much to them. So why would anyone sign up for that? First reason, growing up. During the Muromachi period, daughters of military commanders would start blackening their teeth as young as 8 to 10 years old, marking their exit from childhood. Let that sink in for a second. A kid who probably still had a few baby teeth left was already being told, officially, you're an adult now. Compare that to how we mark growing up today. A first phone, a driver's license, maybe a quinceañera, one loud, symbolic day, and then it's over. You go back to normal life. Muromachi Japan skipped the one-day party entirely. Growing up wasn't an event you celebrated once. It was a routine you kept up every single day for the rest of your life. Less quinceañera, more ongoing subscription. By the Edo period, roughly the 1600s through the 1800s, the meaning shifted a bit and spread even wider. It became closely tied to marriage. If you saw a woman with black teeth, you immediately knew something about her. She was either married, or she'd reached the age where marriage was very much on the table. Unmarried women over 18 wore it too. So did courtesans. So did geisha. Black teeth had basically become a walking, talking status update, instantly readable by anyone who saw you, kind of like a wedding ring today, except a lot higher maintenance and a lot harder to quietly slip off at a party. But here's the twist. This wasn't only a women's thing, samurai did it too. And for them, it meant something a little different. For a samurai, black teeth were about loyalty. Loyalty to your lord, your clan, your whole place in a society that took hierarchy and honor extremely seriously. This wasn't about looking pretty for its own sake. It was a walking, permanent-ish billboard for who you answered to. In a culture that cared this much about rank and honor, your smile was basically doing PR work every time you opened your mouth. And once you know that, a much darker detail suddenly makes a lot more sense. Picture Japan's Sengoku period, the Warring States era, roughly the mid-1400s through the early 1600s. Constant civil war, shifting alliances, clans fighting non-stop for territory and survival. After a battle, there was a very formal ritual called kubi-jiken, literally head inspection. If a samurai claimed he'd killed a high-ranking enemy, he had to prove it. And the proof was, well, the head. Here's where it gets genuinely strange. Before that head could be shown to a general, it had to be prepped, cleaned up, hair retied into a proper top knot, combed until it looked the way a living man's would. And according to several historical accounts, The teeth got blackened too. This wasn't slapped together last minute either. Each head sat on its own small wooden stand, labeled with the names of the victim and the person who claimed the kill, sometimes even presented with a little sock and seaweed, as if it could still enjoy a drink. The general doing the inspecting wouldn't even look straight at it. Tradition said he had to glance sideways, one hand resting on his own sword, part respect, part unease. This was a full ceremony. Nobody was rushing through it. Now sit with this part. Women of the samurai class were the ones specifically assigned to do this prep work, washing blood and grime off a severed head, fixing the hair, painting the teeth black, all so that head would look presentable and dignified enough to sit on a little wooden stand for the commander's formal review. Why go to all that trouble? Because status apparently didn't clock out just because you were dead. A head with blackened teeth read as belonging to someone important, someone worth the trouble, someone whose death actually meant something. A plain, unremarkable-looking head, teeth and all, was quite literally worth less in terms of the reward the killer would get for it. So the beauty standard followed you all the way to the grave, and honestly, a bit past it too. Grooming had become part of the paperwork of war. And I want to underline that this genuinely happened, according to multiple sources. Generals sat through these ceremonies examining row after row of carefully prepared heads, small offerings placed as if serving the dead one last drink before the head was buried or put on display. Blackened teeth in this context weren't a beauty statement. They were currency, practically speaking too. These inspections weren't just for show, real rewards were on the line. Land, rank, payment, a general accepting your claim could set you up for life. A commander who came back with a head nobody could verify risked looking foolish, or worse, dishonest, in front of his own peers. So every little detail in that presentation, the hair, the wash, the teeth, carried real weight. Getting it right wasn't just good manners. It was literally how a warrior got paid. Okay, let's step off the battlefield for a second, because there's actually a genuinely practical, almost wholesome side to all of this hiding underneath the chaos. The iron in that dye wasn't purely cosmetic. Ohaguro is now believed to have worked as an early form of dental sealant. That iron coating helped protect the enamel, cutting down on cavities and gum disease at a time with basically zero access to anything resembling modern dentistry. So while people were absolutely doing this for status, for beauty, for loyalty, they were also, whether they fully understood why or not, protecting their teeth in one of the only ways available to them. Kinda sweet, honestly. Long before toothpaste with fluoride existed, someone in Japan had already stumbled onto the idea that coating your teeth in this iron mixture actually helped. Not that different from you using mouthwash today, without necessarily knowing the exact science behind it. The instinct was solid. The final look, though, admittedly takes some getting used to. And getting used to is putting it kindly, if you ask the first Westerners who ever saw this up close. By the mid-1800s, after roughly 2 centuries of Japan staying pretty closed off from the outside world, Western visitors started showing up in bigger numbers, and a lot of them were, to put it gently, disturbed. Some genuinely thought the black dye was rotten teeth, assuming Japanese dental hygiene must be a disaster. Others figured out it was intentional, and were somehow even more unsettled by that. Here's the fun part, though. From the Japanese side of things, it worked exactly in reverse. Plain white teeth, sitting there bare and exposed, looked less like elegance and more like something out of the animal kingdom. Black meant refined, white meant raw and unfinished. Two cultures staring at the exact same mouth, arriving at completely opposite conclusions about what looked civilized. So what finally ended a 1,000-year-old beauty standard? Politics mostly, more than any sudden change in taste. In 1870, during the Meiji era, as Japan rushed to modernize and open up to Western influence, the government issued a formal decree banning nobility and civil servants from practicing Ohaguro. This wasn't really about dental health, it was about image. Japan wanting to look modern to the Western powers, it was trying to be taken seriously by. And the symbolic final nail came from the very top. The Empress of Japan herself started appearing in public with plain, natural white teeth, quietly breaking a beauty standard that had lasted over 1,000 years and basically inventing a brand new one overnight. Once the imperial family stopped, everyone else scrambled to catch up fast. Within a few decades, Ohaguro went from being an almost universal mark of beauty and status to something people found embarrassing, old-fashioned, a little cringeworthy even. By the early 1900s, it had pretty much disappeared. Not completely gone, though. Wander through Kyoto's old geisha districts today, and every once in a while you might spot a maiko, a geisha in training, wearing blackened teeth for a traditional performance or ceremony. It's rare now and entirely intentional, more of a costume than a daily habit. But it means this thousand-year-old beauty standard never fully vanished. It just quietly shrank down to a handful of streets in one city, kept alive on purpose by people who still understand exactly what it used to mean. So here's the full picture. For over 1,000 years, a bright white smile looked unfinished, almost animal. Instead, people built a daily ritual around painting their teeth black, iron, vinegar, tannin, touched up constantly, smell and all. Black meant maturity, marriage, loyalty, refinement. Kids as young as 8 started the routine as their entry into adulthood. Samurai wore it as a badge of loyalty. And when they died in battle, women of their own class carried that same ritual to their severed heads. Because even in death, appearance still mattered, and so did getting paid. Hidden underneath it all was a real side benefit nobody was chasing on purpose. Teeth better protected than bare enamel ever could be. And then, almost overnight, one decree and one empress's public smile erased 1,000 years of agreement on what a beautiful mouth was supposed to look like. Every single one of those choices made complete sense inside the world that produced them. That's really the part worth sitting with. Nobody involved thought of themselves as strange. Not the 8-year-old girl doing her first application. Not the samurai touching up his loyalty every morning before he'd even picked up a sword. Not the women carefully preparing a fallen enemy's head for one last formal review. Every one of them was simply following their version of looking your best, the exact same way you follow yours without giving it a second thought. There's probably a whitening strip in a drawer near you right now. Maybe a mouthwash, a retainer, all chasing a standard of beauty that feels obvious, permanent, like it's just correct. It isn't. It never really has been. Somewhere for a very long time, the exact smile you're chasing right now would have looked completely wrong, unfinished, a little too close to feral. You'll probably brush your teeth again in a few hours without thinking twice about it, quietly chasing white without ever really asking why white became the goal in the first place. And somewhere buried in that unconscious little habit is the ghost of a completely different answer, one that lasted 1,000 years, survived wars, marriages, and yes, even a few severed heads, and ended the moment one empress simply decided to smile in public.